Hey econ students, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to think about what happens when supply and demand meet. More specifically, we're going to answer the question, what is market equilibrium? So if you're ready to get them brain cow's milk, let's get to it. Okay, now when people talk about the economy, sometimes they use this term equilibrium. What does that mean? Well, in economics, equilibrium refers to a situation where there are no forces acting on a variable to move it from its current state. So, whatever the value of some economic variable is, if nothing else is happening, then it will stay at that level. And economists use the word equilibrium to describe the point where buyers and sellers agree on a price. So let's take a look at what that means with our good old supply and demand graph. Now remember, the demand curve shows how much of a product or service buyers are willing and able to purchase at various prices during a given time period. And the supply curve shows how much of that same product or service that sellers are willing and able to sell at various prices during a given time period. Now, if you want a review of these concepts, check out the video links in the description below. But for right now, just take these curves as given. Now we know that demand slopes downward and supply slopes upward. So where do they intersect? Well, this is the point of intersection. And lo and behold, look at that. The point of intersection is at this price and quantity combo right here. We call this the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. Now, what's so special about the equilibrium price? Well, at this particular price, buyers are willing and able to purchase exactly the same amount of the product or service that sellers are willing and able to sell. In other words, at this price, all the buyers and all the sellers are happy because everyone gets what they want. The buyers want a certain quantity, and they're willing to pay a certain price for that quantity. And the sellers are willing to produce and sell that same quantity for that same price. So at the equilibrium price, the entire market clears. That is, there's no surplus and there's no shortage. Let's consider an example. Let's say that the equilibrium price of beef is $6 per pound. And at this price, the equilibrium quantity of beef is 200 million pounds. Now suppose that for some reason, like a drought, the quantity of beef supplied decreases down to 150 million pounds. Now, since beef is a normal good, and by normal good I mean that as the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down and vice versa. The new lower quantity supplied will lead to a higher price. Now remember, prices adjust until supply and demand are equal. So what will the new price and quantity be? Well, as the price rises above the equilibrium price, a shortage occurs. And that shortage acts as a force that pushes the price back down toward the equilibrium price. And when the price moves in that direction, the quantity demanded moves in the opposite direction. So here's what will happen. The price will rise, but eventually it will stop rising when the quantity demanded adjusts to the new quantity supplied. In this example, the price will stop rising when the price and quantity settle at $7 and 143 million pounds. This is what we call the new equilibrium price and quantity. Now let's consider the opposite situation. Suppose that due to advances in production technology, the quantity supplied increases out to 250 million pounds. Again, since beef is a normal good, the new higher quantity supplied will lead to a lower price. Now, as the price goes down below the equilibrium price, a surplus occurs, and that surplus acts as a force pushing the price back up toward the equilibrium price. And when the price moves in that direction, the quantity demanded moves in the opposite direction. So here's what will happen. The price will fall, but eventually it will stop falling when the quantity demanded adjusts to the new quantity supplied. And in this example, the price will stop falling when the price and quantity settle at $5 and £185 million. These values represent the new equilibrium price and quantity. So to summarize, the equilibrium price is the price that clears the market. That is, it's the price that equates the quantity supplied with the quantity demanded. Or said another way, it's the price that makes the quantity supplied equal to the quantity demanded. And this price will remain stable until something causes the supply or demand curve to shift. Then the price will adjust until a new equilibrium is achieved. Now it is important to note that the equilibrium price and quantity aren't necessarily the best or most efficient price and quantity. They just represent the price and quantity that clears the market. For example, suppose the equilibrium price of oranges is $1.25 each. At this price, the equilibrium quantity of oranges is 1 billion oranges. But suppose that the government imposes a price ceiling of $1 an orange in an attempt to make oranges more affordable for consumers. This price ceiling would cause a shortage of oranges, and that shortage would persist until the price of oranges either increased to a level where the shortage is eliminated, or until the quantity demanded of oranges decreased to a level where the shortage is eliminated. In other words, the equilibrium price and quantity would change. Now, whether or not this is a good thing depends on your point of view. Someone might argue that the price ceiling prevents exploitation of consumers, while someone else might argue that the price ceiling prevents producers from earning a profit. It really depends on your ideology. And if you want to learn more about different economic ideologies, check out the video link in the description below. But the point is that the equilibrium price isn't necessarily the best or most efficient price. It's just the price that clears the market. Finally, let's consider the concept of efficiency and how it relates to the equilibrium price. When talking about the equilibrium price, economists often refer to allocative efficiency, which means that resources are allocated such that the marginal cost of producing an additional unit equals the marginal benefit that society receives from that unit. In other words, if society can find a way to produce one more orange at a price that consumers are willing to pay for it, then it should do so. And this is what happens at the equilibrium price. Now, I'll admit that this definition of efficiency sounds a little vague and hard to understand. So let me try to explain it another way. The idea behind allocative efficiency is that there's no waste. To illustrate this, let's go back to our example of oranges. Suppose that the price of oranges is less than the equilibrium price. This means that at this price, there's a shortage of oranges, and this shortage acts as a signal for producers to increase the price of oranges. Producers will keep increasing the price of oranges until the price reaches the equilibrium price. At this point, there's no incentive for producers to increase the price any further. If they were to increase the price above the equilibrium price, they would actually lose money, since they would no longer be able to sell all of their oranges. Therefore, at the equilibrium price, there's no incentive for producers to waste resources. Instead, all the resources are allocated to the production of oranges that consumers are willing and able to purchase. And this is what we mean when we say that the market is at allocative efficiency. Now, this doesn't mean that there's no waste in the economy when the market is at equilibrium. It just means that there's no waste at this particular price. At other prices, there may be waste, but the equilibrium price minimizes the waste. Okay, that's what equilibrium is. I hope this video has been helpful. If so, please subscribe and leave a comment below to let me know what you found particularly helpful and what you would like to see in future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.